Story 1. It was 2012, and I was at the height of my college enjoyment. I was living with my grandparents after a bad car accident that knocked some sense into my wild life, and I was working hard to make my family proud and gain some traction under my feet. Having always gravitated towards art, I chose this as my major and pursued it with flying colors. I was consecutively making the dean's list, staying home instead of going out, and soaking up every bit of knowledge I could to protect and ensure the success of my future. I was even taking summer classes to graduate early, knowing the sooner I could get out of school, the faster I could start my budding career. It was all peaky keen until a new teacher was hired in the art department. We will call him Mr. Thin, as he was a tall, thin, sort of gangly type with thick-rimmed glasses. All good, right? I was excited to meet someone new who could teach me new things. Except Mr. Thin was not exactly the friendly type. In fact, I couldn't understand why he had gotten into teaching, as I had tried to warm up to him a couple of times and got nothing but frozen shoulders. No one could get close to him. He made awful jokes. In the classroom, it was clear he had some serious insecurities, and his inability to cope with his own issues came out in weird ways. Lashing out at students not doing what they were supposed to, making fun of and giving examples of students not properly following instructions he had given with poor verbal direction, and ultimately making everyone feel sort of uncomfortable in his presence. We all did the best that we could to try and cope with it when going to class with him and stayed focused on the ultimate goal, learning new techniques and getting a passing grade. I had already taken a printmaking class with this teacher and knew what he was like. By this time, my grandmother's illness was getting progressively worse. It didn't help that she was misdiagnosed and given the wrong treatment. And she was the pinnacle that kept our large family together. Thanksgiving was always at her house, every year, traditionally being the binding factor that kept us all connected and grounded. She was unfortunately in and out of the hospital for chemotherapy, and nothing seemed to be going right. I remember the slight silence coming over her as she accepted her fate. As such, I missed a few days of school here and there to help my grandfather take care of her and make sure she was okay during his time working at the office. He hasn't retired, and I'm not sure he will. I did my best, and most of my teachers were lenient, knowing full well the scope of my situation. I had even written a letter to Mr. Thin expressing our family's woes and my commitment to continue my learning track, though I was not physically present. Unfortunately, as I was scheduled to take a graphic design class as part of my required classes, I was grouped with Mr. Thin again as the teacher, something I wasn't exactly looking forward to as I got no response from my letter. But I would do my best trying to focus on my education while my grandmother was slowly dying. Again, he made extremely uncomfortable jokes and made kids feel unable to do as he had commanded. Never directly saying it, but always implying that everyone was an idiot, and that he held all the knowledge that we should all be praising him for this great opportunity bestowed upon us to learn from him. It was grueling. Reminding him of my family situation yet again, he pressed me about my absences in class and threatened to flunk me, giving no leeway or helpful solutions whatsoever. Eventually, I had moved out and down the street from my grandparents' place, and one Tuesday I went to go visit them and check in on my grandpa. As I pulled up to the house, I remember walking up the front curb and seeing gurney tracks in the snow, and the house was empty. I knew this was bad. Eventually, I found my grandpa at the hospital and immediately joined him as he gave me the rundown. We made our way to her room, and family slowly joined us, day by day. I called the school to let them know what was happening, and advisors stated they understood and told me to make sure to inform my teachers so they were prepared to help. Everyone was cool with the circumstances except, you guessed it, Mr. Thin. Unbelievably, I wrote to him again to let him know the scoop, and he flat out told me I was lying and that he expected to see me in class the next day. Mind you, I had just gotten done sitting with the doctor and a priest, being informed these were the last moments. I lost it. I called the school back, furious that I was spending this time defending myself and my family during this sensitive time, that I even had to go through this, and having these minutes taken from me as I said my final goodbyes with my grandma. trying to keep a collected head and be reasonable with outside personnel. They took note of this and let me know they would follow up, allowing me to focus on my family. She passed away. I grieved, and I went back to school in silence. My grades took a slight dip. I stopped making the dean's list, but I made sure to pass my classes as it was still important to me, even though it was all so untimely. I stopped speaking with Mr. Thin until I finally confronted him about his attitude and my situation. He defended himself by saying that, sadly, college kids apparently use the dying grandma excuse all the time to get out of class. Saying this, mind you, without even getting to know me or my situation, without asking a single question about my living situation, what hospital she was in, nothing. He was just assuming I was another lying college kid trying to get out of class. I filed a complaint and presented the death certificate and my previous United States Postal Service confirmed address at my grandparents with the school, stating the teacher had no right to treat me like this. I knew my case was weak. I was missing school, but I wasn't a troublemaker. I felt I had to do my part and say something, even if it meant knowing I would have to go back the next year knowing he still had an office in the art building, where I spent most of my time. The sweet revenge. Fast forward to the summer before my junior or senior year. Remember, I was doing summer classes, so I was only in school for 3 years, and I was out to dinner with my then boyfriend and 2 of his good-looking guy friends. We had a nice time cracking jokes while the sun set over the river canyon. I lamented that this was my last summer before my schooling started for the last year. But after some time had passed, I was ready to make a better effort in order to make my grandma proud from the heavens above. We get up to leave and start walking out after paying the bill. And as we start walking through the restaurant, lo and behold, I see Mr. Thin mopping the floor straight ahead in my walking path. He watches the 3 gentlemen in front of me head towards the exit, then locks eyes with me as I follow. I kid you not, it was like a slow-motion caption, and without even realizing it, by pure habit, I just happened to wave in slow motion as I walked by, watching as he froze with the mop in his hand. It turns out his contract was not renewed for another year, and I retook my graphic design class with another teacher and passed with flying colors, graduating with a bachelor's in arts and going on to work for a major tech company in data analytics, likely making more than him. Mind blown. Story 2. My mom had her friends over for dinner because she hasn't seen them in 5 years. They have a 4-year-old child, and the mother has a stereotypical, I want to speak to the manager look. They come over, and I eat dinner because I'm the nice host who dines with guests. Anytime I have anyone over, I lock my door from the outside if I'm out and inside if I'm in. My door is damaged because I slammed it once, and a part on the side came off. There isn't a big hole in the door. I see the entitled child running towards my room, but I don't think anything of it because it's locked. I have my gaming PC in there. It's a laptop, which is important later. Then I hear a door open, and I'm very protective of my stuff. So I get up from the dinner table to see my door open. I'm thinking, what in the world? How? It turns out the child unlocked the door. How? I don't even know. He goes into my room, sees my gaming chair, immediately climbs up on it, and then tries to climb up to my desk where my laptop is. I freak out, grab him, and put him on the ground trying not to hurt him, and I say, "Me, entitled child. You cannot climb on my belongings like that." Entitled child, why not? Me, because it's expensive and you could break it. Entitled child, so. Me, just get out. The child leaves the room, and not 40 seconds later, I hear, "Excuse me, Mom." This woman stomped to my room like an angry giant, then entered very calmly with the entitled child. Entitled parent, why won't you let my son play? Me. What? He never said anything about playing. He was just climbing on. Entitled parent, I don't care. Let my son play on your computer. You're too old to be playing anyway. I'm 13. Me. Entitled parent, all my games are 18 plus. I can't let him. Entitled parent, again, I don't care. Just let him play whatever. She left without the entitled child, and I just said, "Oh well," and let him play and choose whatever game. I swear on my life I should have just put on educational games because this little troublemaker clicked on the first game he saw in Steam, which was The Forest, a horror survival game. I was like, oh no. Not kidding, literally 5 minutes into the game, he doesn't know what to do and just slams my mouse. I was like, oh no, bro, that's a no-no. And I jump in front of my laptop, trying to be the shield. He literally punches me. I don't care because it didn't hurt. But when he realizes I won't let him play, he runs out to his mother. She excuses herself again, walks calmly to my door, shuts it quietly, and starts screaming like my mom couldn't hear it, and it was a soundproof room. But my goodness, my mom was outside calling someone. Anyway, I'm much taller than the entitled parent, still important later, so the conversation goes like this. Entitled parent: I thought I told you to let my son play. Me: yes, I did, but... Entitled parent: no buts. Let my son play again right now. Me: he tried slamming my stuff, and don't interrupt me. He tried slamming my mouse and destroying it. Entitled parent: I don't care about your mouse. She starts unplugging the PC. Me: what in the world are you doing? Get out of my house. I started pulling her off while her child is trying to climb it again. I pulled the child off as well. Entitled parent: how dare you touch my child, you predator. She slapped me, and I was in disbelief. The entitled parent then manages to pull my computer off and starts walking away until I turn around in disbelief. Me: what the heck do you think you're doing? At this point, my mother comes into the room. Mom grabs the laptop and says, what is going on here? Entitled parent: your son wouldn't let my son play games on his Xbox, so we took it, and he's too old to play games anyway. Mom: give my son his laptop back right now, please. Me: with the biggest smirk on my face, I open my mouth and yell, you rude, annoying troublemaker, get out of my house. Entitled parent: no. The entitled parent starts calling someone. Entitled parent: yes, hello. I have a guy here who just molested my child and is verbally harassing me and assaulting me. Most whimpery voice ever. It is at address X. It is a woman and man. No weapons, no. Yes, I'm safe right now. Okay, thank you. We didn't do anything about it, but she called the police, so they come. Police officer 1 is male, police officer 2 is female. Police officer 1 talking to my mother: excuse me, miss, were you the one who... Entitled parent: yes, I'm the one who called. Oh my lord, they assaulted my son and me. Me: I have no clue what she's talking about. Police officer 1: please wait while she's talking. The entitled parent attempts to explain everything, even how I stopped her kid from climbing on my desk, how she hit me, how I yelled at her, and how I pulled her kid off my desk. Police officer 2: it sounds like you've made a pretty bad image for yourself, considering it's his house and your kid was climbing on his stuff, so he had every right, and you hit him, so you're pretty much at fault if you ask me. Police officer 1: this is pretty ridiculous. You're right. Now, for some reason, this made the entitled parent super duper mad. Entitled parent: did you just call me stupid? Police officer 1: no, ma'am, I... Entitled parent: who do you think you are? She really tried to tackle the officer, and it's the most cringeworthy thing when she just falls off him. After a lot of back and forth, and even more lies from the entitled parent, police officer 1 said, you will be going with us since you made a report about such serious issues just for it to end up being about you not respecting people's stuff and acting entitled. They took her and her son, and I thankfully never encountered the entitled parent again after this. Story 3. I am a geek and punk hybrid, sort of. In my country, India, there are 12 grades in school, along with 2 or 3 pre-primary grades. My parents had transferable jobs, so I ended up changing schools a lot, and since private schools won't take new admissions during midterm, I ended up qualifying entrance for Central School. I studied there up to grade 8, then decided to go for a boarding school. This school was supposed to be in the top 5 schools of India at that time. Now the story begins after I cleared the written test of the school in the morning and was supposed to give an interview in the evening. There, my family acquainted with another from the same hometown. Their daughter, let's call her Laura, the main antagonist, was behaving like the know-it-all brat. And since my family had the bad habit of comparing me with other kids, coupled with the pressure of the interview, it made me go bananas in the head. Well, Laura went to give the interview first and came out upset, stating she answered only 9 of 10 questions correctly. I answered 5 of them and still got selected. It was more of a personality test. Knowledge was tested in the written part. But I had to endure all my family's commentary about how it was just luck, or you won't survive. The school is full of girls like Laura, until the school term started and I started living in the hostel. Now, being the ex-student of bad government schools, I started suffering mainly because the school was strictly English-speaking and my spoken English skills were a disaster. I remember when my teacher asked me why I haven't done my homework, I answered, "Ma'am, I was absent tomorrow." Also, this was my first time away from home, so I got homesick too often. Add to it the stress of weekly tests and disgusting compared to home hostel food. Well, I was experiencing hell. So within 3 months, people's perception of me was that I was dumb, shy, and that I lacked common sense. Only my hostel mates knew my true nature. So I was already stressed, and this girl Laura thinks it's funny to gang up on me and bully me. Surprising, but it actually happened. Every time I was alone, she would mock me, told me I was ugly, fat, and dumb. I, knowing what would happen if my temper goes off, kept mum. She then raised her bars higher and started using strong words and much more indecent words, all in English. I wasn't bothered by it at all in the beginning. I had heard worse from my last school friends. I was just curious why she was targeting me. Turns out she was mad at me for not helping her cheat in the written exam, thereby jeopardizing her chances. Now that she was finally in and I was an established dumb, she could have her way with me. For the whole grade 9, I endured her stuff. Then I began to crack. But fate was against me. She became the girlfriend of my best friend and roommate. Let's call him Edward. Honoring bro code. I had to abort the mission and honoring bro code. He told me the bottom of the iceberg. She spread amongst other girls that I was terminated from my previous school for failing. I scored 93% in the previous grade. My father bribed the school to get me admitted. He had to take a loan to pay my term fees. That I never smoked in my life, not even now, and that I used to beat up the kids who messed up with me. Only right answer. These claims made her a Joan of Arc-like figure, a lady challenging a demon like me. Well, I endured her insults covering every part of my body and everyone in my family for another year. In grade 10, we had our board exams, the first most important exam of an Indian student. There she broke up with Edward, stating he wasn't giving her enough time. He ended up scoring 98.4% with perfect 103 out of 5 subjects. Well, that's one ally for me, as if he wasn't earlier. Next, she hooked up with Robert, my classmate in grade 11. In that time, I started using Facebook, a new trend at that time. This Robert guy was a member of a thug-like group of the school, hence Laura was intoxicated with power. She commented insults on my every photo on Facebook and Robert would like it. I wanted to get back at her, so I commented a passive-aggressive thing on her picture, never knew that I could have blocked her. She, along with Robert, came to threaten me when I was having a snack. But since I was surrounded by my hostel mates, they went away. They later ended up stealing my assignment childish. Yeah, but since I never did them earlier, it wasn't a bother. God, now that I am writing it, it really feels amazing how long I held back. But no more, at least not after that incident. You see, I was pretty unpopular with existing girls, but I befriended this new girl. Let's call her Lucy. I kinda liked her, I admit. But that Laura somehow sensed that and started bad-mouthing me in front of Lucy. I literally snapped. I wanted some high-level revenge. First, I gathered intelligence. Edward being first, and after recent breakup, Robert. Summary being, she had a new boyfriend every year since grade 7, basically since her puberty began, and lost her innocence in grade 11 to some other punk from school cause of breakup with Robert. Well, it wasn't something that would give me pleasure after exposing her. I had to take the other way. I already mentioned my school was too good. In the annual day function of school, the guests were generally some VIPs. In my grade 12, the chief guest was the governor of the state, and that was the time Laura celebrated her 18th birthday. My preparations: I bought a mosquito coil, saved a huge firecracker from Diwali, and for almost rupee 2,000, I obtained 50g pack of green herbs, called raw mango in my area. I spied Laura till I came to know she was going to do something in the girls' room with her new beau on annual day, since everyone would be busy with functions. I then experimented with mosquito coils burn times, and I can proudly say that 3 inches of coil burns for half an hour. Finalizing, on the annual day, I handed the green herbs pack to Edward and set up 12 inches of coil, coupled with the firecracker inside the girls' room, 2 hours before their meeting. Edward put the green herbs pack in her school bag just when she left the class for the auditorium. And then, while our governor was giving a speech, there was a blast heard. Prefects ran to the source, found Laura smooching her new beau. She tried to dismiss her hands in blast, so prefects insisted on checking her school bag. She agreed, confidently, too confidently. By now, even the guards of the governor came to investigate. Principal and teacher came too, maybe trying to show themselves active. And in front of everyone, a 12th grade schoolgirl was caught with the illegal raw mango in her possession. This wasn't a case school could have hidden, so she was arrested. To heck with her 92.4% in board exams. To heck with her expected all-India rank of 15 in mock engineering entrance tests. It was 9 years ago. I went on to a good engineering college and landed a great job. Never heard of her again. Maybe she is released, I don't know. All I know, that the face she made when the prefects took out green herbs from her bag was priceless. Story 4. Well, let me start by saying that we live in one of those neighborhoods. You know, the kind where they have a homeowners association that seems to think they run the entire universe. Picture perfect lawns, matching mailboxes, and a rulebook longer than a bedtime story. So, here's the deal. My dad, he's not getting any younger. One day, he had this joint replacement surgery, and suddenly, he couldn't move around like he used to. The doctor said he needed some time to get back on his feet, quite literally. That's how we found ourselves in the situation of inviting him to live with us. My wife and I thought it'd be no big deal. And our kids, oh boy, they were over the moon about their grandpa coming to stay. You'd think they were about to meet a superhero. Now, we had to prepare for the grandpa's homecoming. The spare room got a thorough cleaning, and we moved out the old exercise equipment that had turned into a clothes rack ages ago. We stocked the fridge with his favorite food and made sure the TV remote had fresh batteries. Because let's be honest, what's a grandpa visit without a little TV time? The day he arrived, you'd think a celebrity was moving in. The kids were glued to the window, waiting for his car, and when he finally pulled up, obviously, he wasn't the one driving. They sprinted to the front door like it was Christmas morning. That night, we all gathered around the dinner table. I swear, you could almost see little heart emojis floating above everyone's heads. The kids kept asking about his surgery, like they thought he had a robot leg now or something. "Did they give you a remote for your new hip, Grandpa?" my younger one asked with a grin. "Nah, no remote," he chuckled, "but I do have a cool scar to show off." We talked and laughed like it was a family reunion, and I couldn't help but feel grateful that we had this time together. It was as if the whole house was buzzing with warmth. After dinner, my wife nudged me and whispered, "You know, he's loving this." I nodded, looking at him sitting there, swapping jokes with the kids. Yeah, I think he needed this as much as we did. Anyways, one day, I'm pushing my dad's wheelchair down the sidewalk, just like any other day. We've been taking these walks to get him some fresh air, help him feel better after that surgery. First couple of days went without a hitch. Neighbors would wave, some even came over to say hi. But then, of course, enter the troublemaker. If you've ever heard of the term entitled, and of course you did, just know that this person is like the queen of that club, and probably you know that too. So there we were, strolling along, when she pops out of nowhere, practically blocking our path. "Excuse me," she starts with that I'm in charge tone of hers. "Who is this with you?" I'm thinking, seriously, lady? Already with the rudeness? But I keep my cool and tell her, "This is my dad. He's staying with us for a bit while he recovers from surgery." "Oh, I see," she says. Then come the questions. One after the other, she's drilling me about everything. Why is he in a wheelchair? Since when is he here? Is this permanent or not? And so much more. I start answering, but then she gets into this territory that's none of her business. Like, why do you need to know that? So I tell her, sorry, but that's a personal matter. I don't think I'm obligated to answer any of these intruding questions. Oh man, did that set her off? She starts going on about how this site isn't appreciated in the neighborhood. Like, what's she talking about? My dad's just sitting there, not causing any trouble. And then she says it. The thing that pushed me over the edge. She calls my dad an eyesore, or at least his wheelchair, I'm not sure. Either way, I swear, my blood was boiling and I lost it. I started yelling at her that she has no right to judge or talk to us that way, and that she should never approach me or my dad again on our walks. She's still going on, saying we shouldn't be out there, that it's ruining the neighborhood's aesthetic. I couldn't take it anymore. I tell her straight up, if you don't back off right now, I'm calling the police for harassment. You should have seen her face. She turned all red, and I thought she might explode. But she eventually storms off, yelling and using strong language like she's the one who got wronged. Before she disappears, though, she throws out a final threat. If she catches us out again, she's going to make us regret it. I brushed it off at the time, thinking she's just spouting hot air. But little did I know just how far this whole situation was going to spiral out of control. A few days after the whole showdown, I figured it's time to take my dad for another walk. This time, I decided to bring the kids along, turn it into a little family outing. We headed to that small park nearby, and everything seemed cool at first. I left the kids at the playground for a moment to grab some ice cream for everyone from a stand nearby. I mean, what's a park trip without some sweet treats? But when I returned, my heart just dropped at the nightmarish scene I was seeing. There was the troublemaker, in the middle of a full-blown altercation with my oldest kid. He's trying to push her away, while she's basically shoving him off and attacking him. And then I saw it, my dad, on the ground, wheelchair tipped over, and my other two younger kids crying their eyes out. It was chaos. I'm not even sure how I managed to react so quickly. Adrenaline must be a powerful thing. I rushed over, pulled my kid away from her, and got to my dad. He was on the ground, looking dazed. I helped him back into his wheelchair, gently, making sure he was okay. But then, all my attention turned back to the troublemaker. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. She had actually gone and done it. Obviously, she had pushed my dad out of his wheelchair, just like she threatened. I was seething at this point. I walked right up to her, barely containing myself. "Did you do this to my father?" I asked her with a raging voice. And you know what she did? That smug grin of hers grew wider, and she actually said, "Yes. I told you I'd make you regret it, and I wasn't lying." Before she could finish her twisted victory lap, I snapped. My fist connected with her face before I even realized what I was doing. It was like an explosion of pent-up frustration, a punch fueled by all the anger she had caused. I even noticed that a tooth of hers went flying, and she crumbled to the ground like a paper doll. I stood there, breathing heavily, still processing what had just happened. The shock was written all over her face, like she couldn't believe I had actually fought back. But there she was, lying on the ground, her smugness shattered along with her tooth. I turned back to my family, making sure everyone was okay. My dad was shaken but all right. My older kid looked at me with concern. And the younger ones, well, they were still crying, but I could tell they felt safer now that I was there. After the whole chaos with the troublemaker at the park, the police arrived. I was honestly worried she'd managed to spin the situation and paint me as the bad guy. You know how some people can turn on the waterworks and make themselves out to be victims? Well, that's exactly what she was doing. She was going on about how I had, unprovoked, hit her, how she was going to ruin me, take my house, and drag me through court until I had no money left. But, you see, one of the officers wasn't buying her act. He had this look in his eye, like he saw right through her. He asked me to share my side of the story, and I did just that. Then, he turned to the kids and some of the witnesses who were there. It was like a courtroom drama playing out in the middle of the park. Turns out, one smart teen had been filming the whole thing on their phone. He was filming his friends skating nearby when he heard the commotion and turned to see her pushing my dad off his wheelchair, and he even got her admitting to it on camera when I asked her if she was the one that did it. It was a game changer, a piece of evidence that turned the tables completely. The officer watched the video, and I could see his expression change from skepticism to understanding. I guess it's true what they say, karma has a funny way of catching up to you. The tables turned swiftly. Suddenly, the troublemaker went from a woman claiming to be a victim to a woman in handcuffs, being escorted to the police car. She was yelling, screaming, and throwing a fit, but there was no escape from the truth caught on camera. After the officers took her away in their car, we started to all calm down a bit. But there was one thing that was still weighing on my mind: my dad's fall. I couldn't shake off the worry that the impact might have caused some damage to his surgery. So, we headed to the hospital to get him checked out. Turns out, my worries were on point. The fall had caused some implant displacement, and the doctors said he needed another surgery to fix it. It was a setback, for sure, but we were determined to get him back on his feet, quite literally. As for the troublemaker, well, justice wasn't about to let her off the hook. She was charged with aggravated assault, battery, and assault on a vulnerable person among other charges. And you know what? She got herself a cozy 10-year stay in prison. If it was up to me, I'd send her to life in prison, but honestly, I'm fine with 10. Now, fast forward a bit. In less than 2 years, my dad was making amazing progress. He underwent the surgery, followed the rehab regimen like a champ, and he was walking again, no crutches needed. It was amazing to watch him rise up again, especially after what he went through. And the best part was that we could finally take him and the kids back to that same park without fearing a troublemaker lurking around the corner. We had a beautiful outing, just like we had intended from the start. He was walking alongside his grandchildren, seeming as happy as you could imagine. Life sure has its ups and downs, its troublemakers and its challenges. But as long as you've got family, the support of those who care about you to face whatever comes your way, you can weather any storm. And in the end, it's not the entitled people who define your story, it's how you react to their insane demands.